Alright, today is July 11th, 2021, and we're going to continue our discussion on the Desiderata Extinctionati. And go ahead, Gary, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to make a point which was regarding the kind of carrot and stick that Hugh was talking about earlier in terms of getting people to take the vaccine. But I think something Sophie said afterwards was just reminding me of one of those articles about Klaus Schwab and Davos and the Great Reset, all this kind of thing. I think in one of those articles, I don't know if you remember it, Hugh, it had there was a section where somebody remarked, or it was said that they're actually going to probably lean on the pandemic and extend it and use that as leverage to justify all the additional things that they want to bring in, the reforms of the digital currency and all this kind of thing, but use the kind of emergency situation, keep the kind of emergency situation that we're in going for as long as they can, to enable them to sort of slip in this other agenda along the way, while everything is in a state of abnormality. So you can see that there's if you want to go for yet another conspiracy theory, you've got the fact that in a lot of ways the pandemic has been very convenient for people who are looking at introducing those things.
So yeah, that's not a conspiracy. Klaus Schwab is on record for saying, openly that we must use the pandemic for a great reset. He didn't make any bones about it. He didn't make any skull or bones about it. But yeah, I mean, it's remarkable now that they don't even bother to hide it. You see, there's been a trend over the last maybe 20 years that they've been more and more bold, and they get into the stage where they just don't even care whether you know what they're doing or not. They say outrageous things and just carry on. There's no comeback. Outrage is gone. There's no such thing as public resistance or moral outrage, any kind of outrage. And so everybody's kind of simmering and stewing, and they just carry on. There's no accountability. Look at this thing about the lab leak, that all these news outlets and that they covered all of that up, banned people that as conspiracy theorists that said it. Now it's acceptable to say it, and the Ministry of Truth has given that as story, the seal of approval. There's no comeback. There are no lawsuits against the companies that did the banning and stuff, and there's no repercussions. It's just astounding. It's just absolutely
you notice
astounding.
I notice it just in perfectly ordinary newspaper articles where you get the usual scandal about some politician or some person like that, and the whole thing is laid out in pornographic detail and everybody's tut-tutting about it, and absolutely nothing changes. Everybody just carries on as though it's just like, well, this politician is as corrupt as hell, and he's involved with these all these relationships with women and that are all questionable, and there's suggestions of corruption left, right, and centre. And like the next day, they're just everything's just going along just the way it was before, as though that was just like a little entertainment interlude, and now we're just, that's over. But the people aren't affected. The government doesn't change. The issues are never, the issues are followed up. It's just nothing happens,
It makes me think of Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs. Do you know when they're going to be, in that book about that serial killer, Hannibal Lecter, The Silence of the Lambs, where he describes that in the book, that's what happens just before the slaughter. There's a big silence. Nobody says anything. Just goes. That's it. And that's what I feel at the moment. I don't like it, but makes me think of that. Mm.
Yeah, do you remember the Profumo affair? Do you remember the Profumo affair, back in the 70s?
In the UK.
Mandy Rice Davis and Christine Keeler and all of that. And it was, if you think about that, it was just a scandal of, basically a minister sleeping with a prostitute, and that, Profumo was a Russian diplomat, was also sleeping with her. And that almost brought down the fucking government. And today, it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't even appear in, next week's news. It's incredible how we've gone from one generation to something like the Profumo affair to now. There's just nothing matters. It's a masterpiece of active measures. It's basically, Sarkov and all these guys. It's basically they worked all this stuff out. Basically, they say if you bombard people with enough, they just get overloaded, and there's no more scandal anymore. You just debase the currency, and we've got to it now. We're well and truly at the point where there's no such thing as a scandal anymore. I mean, they just like mafia dons. They obviously wiped out Epstein. They're probably going to wipe out Assange. There's, it's just like Khashoggi and stuff. They just hoods. A lot of them. They're just criminals running the world. And I wonder if we are getting to a point where people will rebel. I mean, it's got to be close.
Do you think that
they do run the risk?
Or will we continue to just be desensitized and not care? Because if we're so overwhelmed with all the messes all over, or do you think there'll be a point where the camel's back would break and people would actually rebel?
Yeah. See, the average person is the same throughout history, and what he shows is that there's a certain point where people just tip, and then they go apeshit. So you can I mean, it's like in Indonesia. So, I think the Dutch were in Indonesia for 600 years, and they took the piss over and over again, and they didn't realize that they were building up pressure in the population. When the Indonesians ran amok and just slaughtered them, they were shocked. Because you see, the perpetrators, they don't notice because they're not suffering. So they just psychopaths. So they keep on pushing the boundary, and they don't notice that the pressure's building up. But the pressure does build up, and then eventually, like from the French Revolution and stuff, eventually it tips over, Russian Revolution and stuff, and then all the establishment are kind of shocked. They never realized in their kind of little bubble that people were actually building up. The pressure cooker was actually building up.
I was thinking about something like that, listening to that podcast, the Popular Front podcast, where he talked about the ITS, the individuals tending towards savagery. As you listen to that, at first it seemed shocking that they were just doing. He said they're just fucking doing anything. They didn't even appear to have an agenda. They're just going for it, like whatever they could bugger up and kill and shoot, and that's what they were doing. But by the time you come to the end of listening to that podcast, you start to understand just what you're saying. That you push and push and push, and these people have got no idea the pressure they're building up. Maybe not everywhere, but certainly in some people, in some groups, they really are. They really are asking for an explosive response. By the end of that, I'd gone from being rather shocked at this you know, even just when he said the name of it, I thought, what does ITS stand for? And then when he said the name of it, I thought, oh my God. But then, you know, later on, you start to realize that that's not as irrational and oh, you know, gratuitously gory as you might think at first. So anyway.
Yeah, so I think the pressure's building up a lot on the right, particularly on the right. And the right has this Christian narrative and this kind of end times apocalyptic narrative. And they really feed into that more and more. You can see that growing. But, you know, there's something out of South African history. When I was in school, the history that they taught us was government propaganda. So they set the history books. And one of the things they said about why white people kind of deserve to own the country and rule it it was kind of an argument that it was won in a fair fight. So it was kind of, I can't remember what that argument is, but if you have a war and win territory, it's considered acceptable way of gaining territory and international law. So the same thing applies. Now, what they said to us was odd, and they said that the reason why all the black people were impoverished and in 1900 and is because there was really a big rebellion then, and the specific reason why black people were poor and lost is because there was this figure, this woman who was a cult leader. In fact, she was a priestess or kind of prophetess, and she said that she prophesied that black people are going to rise and sweep all the white people into the sea. But she said, as part of the thing to fulfill the prophecy, you must give up all your professions, burn down your possessions, burn down your house, and And so, I think, I mean, it did actually happen. It's just the propaganda made it quite overblown and said it happened with millions and millions of people, which I don't think so. I think it's probably hundreds of thousands, maybe. But they said that that's why black people are impoverished, because of that. They gave everything up and burned everything they had. But it's kind of interesting that in those times of rebellion, there's this common theme of cult leaders and charismatic figures coming and making these doomsday predictions and having tremendous impact on a revolution. So it's I think it really is time for cults and cult leaders and stuff, and I think that is how a revolution will happen. You see, people don't just run into the streets and go nuts. They rally around a charismatic leader that tells them to do it. And so there are a number of figures, that if the guys that get more and more popular, anybody from like Chris Hedges to a number of other figures, they're not particularly cult leadery, but they can go over the edge. You can get one guy who just goes completely, okay, no more Mr. Nice Guy. And he goes completely over the edge and says, pull the ring out. And then everybody goes nuts in their name. Because the kind of thing is, if so-and-so, who was Mr. Reasonable, said this is beyond the pale, it's now time for blood, then people take that very seriously. So anybody from like Noam Chomsky to Jordan Peterson, anybody could be one of these guys that they just go off the rails. They could get long COVID and become a COVID zombie and go a little bit nuts. And then they would unleash a lot of people on the streets. So yeah, I think we should get ahead of the game and just start instigating it. Yeah. I'm disappointed there's been a week without any comeback from last week on this very topic. But yeah, I can see there are more and more people that are starting to get this. I mean, I found people on Reddit that are saying, I want to start a cult. How do I do it? It's amazing.
You remind, just talking about Chris Hedges, I was listening to a thing of his the other day. Sorry, I don't have the name of it, but he was talking about, you might know these people, I didn't know them, the Reverend William Campbell and Fred Hampton as two sort of radical organisers earlier in the 1900s, I gather, in the USA. And they were, one of them, I don't know which one he was talking about, were very much involved with uniting the divided, the black people and the white people, getting a united action in a certain direction. He was talking about how the divide and rule had worked all together too well. And the left and the right and the blacks and the whites had to find some way of coming together. I think one of the people who was talking about it might have been this Reverend William Campbell. He said was all involved with black issues and all the rest of it, but was simultaneously a member of the KKK, and he was using this as an example of what kind of extreme you've got to bridge to bring people together. And apparently this, there was some success in this, I think, in terms of workers' rights and that kind of thing. I'm just looking at my notes here, but I haven't got enough detail, unfortunately.
Well, there's a real simple narrative it seems kind of golden to me in this day and age of uniting both the right and the left. So if they divide and conquer, if they use divide and conquer tactics, which they always do, there is a danger for them, for the establishment, that there's a new narrative that makes a different divide. And so you can easily unite around some new narrative. So the divide and conquer says, all shit happens because you don't vote for the right party. But if the narrative changes and says, no, shit happens because it's all the humanists and technology, and it's modernity, then suddenly you get a divide that's lateral, that goes, in a completely new direction. And so you can see it now with this transhumanist narrative from Allison and stuff. There are a lot of people on the left that think exactly the same way, that it's all gone too far. And so then if suddenly the population turns and says, yeah, we're sick of the digital world, we're sick of digital control, we're sick of transhumanism, we're sick of all these geeks and all the billionaires, they're all technocrats. And so if everybody turns against the technocracy, you unite so many factions. Because in a new narrative to say that shit happens because technology, and that can really backfire on them. So I think it's a perfect thing to peddle. I think it's a very, very good narrative to say that, it's all the fault of technology. Because, the best will in the world, people are starting to see now that technology is not doing anybody any favors. More and more people are seeing that. And with COVID and stuff like that, they've had time to think. And people don't want to go back to work now in the US. But basically, there's the highest unemployment ever and the highest job vacancies ever. It's completely polarized. People are pissed off. Everybody's heard about job, and they're like, everybody's urban, and then the service economy. And so they're saying, like, everybody who's in the service economy has a bullshit job. The service economy is a byword for unproductive bullshit. And everybody feels that. And they say, like, I'm not risking my life and risking COVID to go into an office. So I don't like it. I'm sick of the abuse. I don't trust these people. And more and more people are feeling that way. So it's a gift to revolutionaries.
And I think disruption is seductive, and I think a lot of people got a taste for it, of the disruption, and of suddenly not going away from home in the morning. It has had an enormous effect. We won't see it straight away, but I think you're right. And that Chinese movement that you were posting about on Reddit with lying flat, I think I've talked to my nephew's married to a Chinese girl, and I was talking to her about it. She said it's going viral on all the Chinese social media. She said it is extremely popular in China, lying flat. Not talking about Japan, because Japan is having an epidemic of those slow, the sloth club and the slow movements. That's going on for quite a few years, actually. It was more a reaction to psychological problems that young people were experiencing, but it is there. You can't deny it, you know. I mean, unless it's
well, it's a generational thing, isn't it? It's a generational thing. Is that the younger generation has been disenfranchised, and they don't have any hope. They don't have any hope in the old formula of prosperity, that you can get educated, get a degree, get on the housing ladder. Most young people now don't see any chance of having a house. They don't see any reason to have kids, and they feel completely betrayed. And so the chances of them actually working for the system is getting low. They don't know how to rebel against the system. They're feeling kind of powerless. But if revolutionaries help them find their power, they will unleash a lot of anger. I'm pretty sure of it.
But it's a form of revolution and rebellion to do nothing too, because lying flat and what these things have a profound rebellious tinge to them. It is another tool. It's just okay. I just do nothing.
Oh, it's the ultimate tool, isn't it? It's strike. So it's basically, if you had a rent strike, a debt strike, and a wildcat strike, the system would end. The system would end tomorrow. And so it's only a matter of time before people do that. And so I think that we should be preparing. I really hope that Faulty hasn't just like gone off the reservation, because
and the
it really is time to. Yeah, I mean, but it really is the time. I kind of, it's kind of frustrating, because to me, I can see a storm brewing, and it's such an obvious time of opportunity, and people are not seeing it that way. People are saying, "Oh, everybody's despondent. Oh, these guys are so powerful. Oh, we can't do anything," and stuff. And it's like, no, I don't see it that way. I think we're getting very, very close to the boil bursting. And so I think we should be positioning ourselves for exactly that. And the way it's likely to break is, with a massive authoritarianism. And the way around that is secret societies and parallel markets and all of these things, which we should be doing, we should be developing. I mean, not the blockchain and stuff. I don't think those have a hope, because all these countries the governments are building their own blockchain. So they're not going to accept competition from Bitcoin and stuff no longer. And so, yeah, but all these Bitcoin zealots and stuff are going to be disappointed. But I've made real enemies from Bitcoin zealots because they say, "Oh no, it can't be shut down" and stuff. And it's like, that's fantasy. It can be shut down in a heartbeat. Or all I say, all you have to do to shut it down is to say, if you use Bitcoin, it's a felony. So it's nothing to do with the technology and blockchain and how you can't defeat it. Of course you can defeat it. You just terrorize people into not using it. So it's like easy to defeat it. But geeks always think in terms of problems that they can solve, technical problems, and they make everything technical because they can solve technical things. But that's not the way it rolls out. It's human, and it's psychology and politics, human psychology and politics. So they're always blindsided by the human element. But and so yeah, the blockchain and stuff, they're not thinking in terms of the human element. It's just they just terrorize people into not using it. But I'm getting increasingly concerned that I can't seem to communicate what seems so obvious to me, and when I feel like everybody's missing the chance of a lifetime, or all the like anarchists and all these revolutionaries and stuff. They have their heads so far up their ass. You're saying, oh, there'll never be an anarchist revolution. No, the chance of centuries is coming, and people are just can't see it. I don't know how to communicate it.
I mean, do you think something drastic needs to happen? I mean, I don't know, the pandemic seems already drastic enough. These climate events, but I don't know what else it takes. Does it take more bodies on the floor? War. That's a good one.
Yeah. Where we're heading for is war, because you see what they're doing is the next crisis is there are two crises coming, and one is famine, and you can see that with the food prices rising all over the world. And the other is a fiscal crisis. So the fiscal crisis looks deliberate. It looks engineered to me. Certainly at Davos and what these guys seem to be doing with the financial Great Reset it's a deliberate effort to wipe out fiat currencies. So everybody goes, there's going to be stagflation and stuff, and it's like they're not looking at the obvious. If the Fed is, the Fed cannot be as dumb as it looks, basically. So everybody looks at the Fed thinking, well, they're completely against what every investor and everybody in the market knows. I say, yeah, what are the chances of that? I think that they should assume that the Fed's a little bit smarter than that, and the Fed is deliberately wiping out the currency. And so you can see from there how quickly you can get onto, it's a debt jubilee. They have to have a debt jubilee. And the inflation is a way of wiping out debts. So they are the creditors. The banks are the creditors. They are the guys that own the debt. And they all, the guys at the BIS and at Basel and stuff like that, they are the creditors. So if the creditors are wiping out the currency, it means that, they as the debtors would be the ones you think would, want a strong currency. So the fact that they're doing this must mean that they have some other plan. And that plan is obviously, it's digital currencies, because digital currencies will give micro control. If everything is e-money on the blockchain, they can control human behavior at a tiny grain, at a level that's unimaginable. The social engineering that you can do with nuds and prods, and particularly with poor people and people that, the large surplus population that is probably going to be on a UBI or social welfare. Those social welfare payments can be controlled to a micro level, so that you can't rebel anymore. If you rebel, it would destroy your social credit score and stuff like that. It's the same kind of thing as China. I think they envy the guys in China and what they've achieved in China. So they're liable to wipe out the currency just because everybody needs a debt jubilee. They basically, it's a way of doing a big reset. Financial Great Reset means that everybody is just, it goes to zero. So, and you can see the insiders know it, because they're getting into fixed assets. So they're getting into land, and they're getting into stuff that can survive the crash of a fiat currency. So, you can see it unfolding before your eyes, but nobody's really looking.
I've actually received messages in Ireland today from various people, and especially one that's quite in the know, that's telling me that there's a pile of people who are buying vast amounts of land and properties without even visiting them. at any price.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
all over the world.
Yeah.
It's happening all over.
Yeah, yeah. Without they just okay, it's for sale. Bye.
You see you'll see it all over in like any kind of fixed assets. So art treasures, any kind of land, any gold and silver, precious metals and stuff that people. Yeah, the people will get into those because basically it's Weimar Republic things. Those things will survive handsomely.
Hugh, can I jump in there?
Yeah.
Where you were talking about just now, and also just a couple of minutes ago, where you were talking about how Bitcoin will be pushed aside because the nations will just develop their own digital currency system and make anything else illegal or criminal or the rest of it. I was thinking about something that was in one of the videos. Now, I don't know if it was Mario or maybe that other fellow. What's his name? Maloney. One of those videos like that.
Mike Malone.
And Mike Maloney. Yeah, they referred to. I think it was the 1930s in the USA. I'm not sure that I'm remembering this correctly, but it was where the government was trying to collect all as much silver and gold as they could to I suppose to back the currency with, and they were making it illegal for private citizens to hold silver and gold, and the penalties were very severe. And people were being forced to cash it in, to surrender it to the government for fiat currency. And I'm just thinking of that in two perspectives. One is that there they were. Here you are saying, well, they're going to probably can make Bitcoin illegal. But we've got here precedent for making actually fixed assets illegal to hold as well. I'm just sort of wondering about that because, these people who are hoarding lots of stuff, and, if they say, well, that's just illegal to trade, you're not going to be able to use it. Are they going to be caught out in just exactly the same situation?
Yeah. So they made it illegal to hold any specie and in gold, so you couldn't own bullion. And then they fixed the price of gold at $35 an ounce, and it stayed that way till 1971 when they completely went off the gold standard. When they went off the gold standard, then there was no reason to regulate gold. But the guys, the guy, sort of like Astor's and all those rich guys of the time, they made huge fortunes out of gold because they took it offshore. They basically they bought gold at $35 and smuggled it overseas, where there was no, where you were allowed to own gold, and basically it was free floating on the market. So it was an extraordinary theft of assets. Yeah, they'll do that. They'll do that too. So yeah, that almost certainly will happen at some. If the currency, if there's hyperinflation, they're forced to do that in a lot of ways, because otherwise there's a big wealth transfer to people that have gold and stuff, and the governments don't. It looks like, the US is and Britain have spent all their gold. They've all passed it out. So and
what about all those guys on Wall Street bets and silver squeeze and all these guys who are piling up silver and gold and all that? So what's going to happen to them? I don't understand why they're doing it. So because if they're
I keep on encouraging people to do it. Yeah, I keep on encouraging people to do it because the currency first has to inflate. And so it's been inflating tremendously, but I mean, for hyperinflation, it takes a while. So in that time, gold and silver going up, you have to get out of gold and silver before they make it illegal to hold it. At some stage, the currency becomes like the Zimbabwe dollar, and then then they will try and seize gold. They'll try and make you. So there are some differences before 1935, and there was. So the differences today are that we have a sort of a Cold War. We're in Cold War II, and China has a lot of gold, and so does Russia. So they have a vested interest in having gold tradable and not a fixed price, and so you could always take gold and sell to some place where China's dominant or Russia's dominant in a Cold War situation. So the thing is, you have to be able to smuggle gold, and that's not easy for the average Joe to do. But if you have a boat, you're in pretty good shape. By the way, they did all this in South Africa. I'll tell you another reason why not. Yeah, okay, so anyway, in South Africa, they did the same thing. They had currency and exchange controls. So they have to do currency controls. It's very easy to do currency controls with crypto, because basically you can just make certain transactions illegal. So they're already doing that, by the way. They already have currencies in their back pocket that where they can disallow you from, say, using them on the dark web and stuff, because they can disallow people from using certain specific people from using them, and they can disallow certain types of transactions. So they can stop you buying weed or something like that, whatever they choose. If they have the cryptocurrency, they can make those kind of things where you have to say what it is you're trading, and then you have to say whether it's legal or not. So yeah, they did all of this in South Africa, and during apartheid, because as soon as there were sanctions, everybody knew that the rand was going to fall tremendously, and so they tried to get their money out. So to stop them getting money out, they did exchange controls. Now, what happens when you do exchange controls is everybody tries to smuggle money out of the country to preserve their wealth. And anybody during the 80s that went on holiday in Europe from South Africa, I did it myself. We went and basically you fill your shoes with gold coins. And we used to go and just test it, get a metal detector and see how many coins you could do until the metal detector went off at the airport. Because if they caught you, then they'd confiscate it all. But anybody that, as a teenager just going to Europe and stuff, then people said, oh, here, take these coins. I had to take all these gold coins for people. But the famous thing was to get a boat and to put gold. I knew some people that built a boat with a gold keel and sailed it out. But it'd be tremendously dangerous if you hit a rock or something. It's like the golden keel goes down. But yeah, the other thing is to get an asset like an aircraft. So they would buy aircraft and then fly them out the country and sell them again. And then those would.
This sounds like that story of This sounds like that story of Elon Musk and the Emerald Mine. His father had a plane and flew it out, and sold it at great profit. But Elon was busy selling precious stones from their mine.
Yeah. So also diamonds. Diamonds are very easy to smuggle.
The sale of precious stones in Africa, it's like you're talking about chewing gums. Like it's just going, every person in Africa is smuggling precious stones outside the country. It's a trade that's even encouraged by religious religious groups in the Congo, in Angola, in South Africa, and everywhere. You got precious stones. They're selling to the Arabic Peninsula. They're taking them to China. And your ordinary run-of-the-mill guy, you know, your missionary or preacher, is traveling with his suitcase full of diamonds, and it's going on for years. It's I came across a case that I had to look after for medical reasons, and the story was it's just it was oh God.
Smuggling in a condom up the arse. Yeah. Condom up the arse is the way that you smuggle diamonds, by the way.
I think I was just thinking about the situation here because, you know, a lot of this too, you've got like in most continents, you've got different countries and you've got overland routes which give you options. You can travel there. But, you know, in a place like Australia where it's just one homogenous blob, there's only one nation, and the only way to get off it is on a boat in that scenario. And the next nearest place is a long way off. You know, you've got a different situation.
The rich make out like bandits. No, the rich really
the
like
rich,
this.
yeah, well, of course, they always will. But I mean,
the rich
the point of
bandits because they have private planes and basically every time your private plane takes off and goes somewhere, you make sure that it's bloody filled to the gills. And the customs don't give super rich people much trouble. So yeah, I tell you, just at the place I was wintering at here in Greece, this boat comes in from Albania. It's one of these cigar boats that it does 160 miles an hour on the water, and basically it pulls into the marina. It has 3 people on board. They're just 2 young kids, just this guy and young guy and this young girl, and then this older guy who was obviously the boat driver, kind of obviously he was kind of like the security guard kind of guy, and he comes ashore with this kind of suitcase, and they go to the bar, have coffee and stuff, and then, you know, he comes back about an hour later, and then they go off in the boat at 160 miles an hour, and they're going to Albania, and so they do it regularly all the time. And I said to the guys at the marina, I said, you know, they're running drugs, right? And they didn't. They're like, of course they're running drugs. What do you think is going on there? They have a boat that, like, the Coast Guard the top speed of the Coast Guard vessels is like 40 miles an hour. There's no ways they're going to catch them. The guys don't pass through passport control. They just do it with impunity. And so, I mean, it's a very good time to be rich.
You're reminding me of something because due to the pernicious effect of Lord Hugh, I'm often awake in the middle of the night. And it just sometimes I've been outside, the toilet is outside, and sitting there and thinking, it's like 1:30 a.m. in the morning, and there's a curfew on the airport around here. I mean, there's no flights after between 11 p.m. and 6 p.m. But I was noticing that night after night, there will be this plane go past, just solitary plane, just appear out of nowhere. And I thought, where the hell does this thing come from? And what secret mission is it on about? And I think it might have been you or somebody put me onto the app for Flight Radar, I think it's called, where you can identify what these flights are. Yeah, Flight Tracker. So I had a little bit of fun with Flight Tracker. And this plane that goes past regularly is a private jet service, obviously for extremely wealthy people. And it can be hired, it's set on their little notice area, it can be hired out by private individuals or enterprises and corporations and government departments. And I thought, look, basically it's obviously on some kind of, highly questionable mission. in the middle of the night, why the flight has to be made in the middle of the night, and it wasn't going overseas. It was just going to some other place in the country, which made it even more curious in a way. But yeah, you just reminded me of that, talking about the cigar boat.
Yeah, so a large part of all the drugs being flown around the world are the CIA. So I told you about I got this friend who flew for the CIA, who basically was a mule for the CIA. And if you ever see a white plane, like a private jet, it's kind of like a pastel color and no markings, you know damn well what that thing is doing. And so, yeah, I wasn't kidding when I posted on XRMed about pulling out of Afghanistan. They really are going to have, the CIA is going to have to take a big hit on their revenue. They'll have to find revenue from somewhere else. Because it's not a conspiracy theory. It's most of the drugs on the street in America have been funneled by the CIA. There's plenty of stuff that's been exposed that from the 60s that they made a deliberate pandemic of drug use, particularly in the inner city areas, and they knew that it would all be black people and stuff. So it's a kind of a eugenics program that they were selling drugs internally in America. It's population control. And so, yeah, I'm kind of amazed that liberals don't know all of this stuff. And if you tell them, then it's all, head exploding, you've got a tinfoil hat, and, they all blame it on you. But it's not really hidden very deeply.
No, I mean, because you put up, I can't remember, just something on Reddit recently where we exchanged a comment about how the Liberals' heads were going to explode at this, something. Maybe I've just lived in a sheltered little burrow for too long, but I have trouble believing that they're actually that far gone. They really just can't get their head around. Well, like, for instance, I think it was that one, the video of that guy talking about, if his bra on and his long hair. What was that one about? I've forgotten now. I listened to that through and I thought that was pretty mundane, especially compared to the one he'd done before about the Tesla cars, which was a bit confronting to anyone with an ego. But I genuinely had trouble accepting that people would be really challenged by what he was putting forward there. I thought, fuck, are they just really so far off with the fairies? Is it really that bad? And is it really that widespread?
Are you talking about JP?
Sorry?
Are you talking about that YouTuber, JP, who did the one on
the YouTube.
On the Tesla car? Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I followed your exchange there. Yeah. And what he's saying is absolutely obvious, isn't it? It's just...
Well, that's what I thought. I thought that there are really people who can't get their brain around this, even if they don't quite agree, that they can't at least hold it in their mind and think about it a little bit without going, into some kind of dreadful reaction. It was almost as though I was... Go on, sorry, Hugh. Yeah.
Yeah, if I cross-post any of those kind of things to Extinction Rebellion, they get downvoted to oblivion. You can see that the psychological reaction is it's extreme, it's visceral, and very, very mild stuff. That's factual. It's actual. You can see that they just don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
But the liberals don't do conspiracy. It's like a dysfunctional family where they all know that the father's an alcoholic and he's abusing the kids and stuff, but they will not talk about it. It's kind of this R.D. Laing thing. It's like nobody will say, they walk around this elephant in the room, and nobody will criticize or finger the problem or talk about it. And they all know it's going on. In all abusive households, that's what happens. And we're living in an abusive household.
Yeah.
So our leadership is abusing us. And no one will talk about it. Because just think what a big ask it is to ask a house slave to accept that it is actually a plantation when they the whole worldview makes revolves around them not accepting it as what it is. So, but you have to think in terms of they have to go back to their schooling, and they have to say all the people they trusted, like all the fond memories they have of Miss Golding back in primary school and stuff, and they have to say that Miss Golding was either deluded, naive, or otherwise she was in on it and freaking evil.
Yeah.
And so you have to all these authority figures and stuff, and people that guided them and told them and corrected them. And you have to say they were all in on it. They were all either duped or otherwise, basically bought by the system, but they're completely untrustworthy. Once you start knocking off people that are untrustworthy, where do you stop? You have to cut the head off the beast of everybody you know.
I think you said
they know that very well.
You said one day that people you thought that people who had been quite traumatized by these sort of things were more able to see this. You in one of our conversations, I don't know, was it on a one-to-one conversation or was it in the group? But you said that a few times, that people who have personally experienced this kind of thing and have realized, got out of it, are much more able to see what's going on and get out of this sort of
because if you can actually push somebody too far until basically if they really get hurt. You see, a lot of the reason why the liberals go along with this is because they're complicit. The liberals are very, very evil, and the reason why they're evil is they kind of like in a dysfunctional family, but they kind of like the favorite kid. So they're not getting the abuse. They know the abuse is happening, but they turn a blind eye to it because of their privileged position. So they're like the house slaves that pretend that it's not really a plantation and pretend that, people are not being raped on the plantation and people are not being whipped and abused and stuff. So you can see in them that they're very, very nice. But when you confront them with the truth of, say, what Britain did in Kenya or something, they know and they turn away. They know that they're lying. They know that they're covering up evil. And they'll do a certain kind of, bit of soul cleansing. So they'll do a bit of activism and, a bit of outrage at the government, doing this or that. But, things against, say, anti-Iraq, and then say, they lied, we died kind of thing. They'll do a little bit of that just to cleanse their conscience. But on the whole, they will stop short of staring the beast in the face. And that's, and the leadership knows that. And they strengthen the middle class because it's a buffer against the really suffering people. And so, if the middle class ever get hollowed out, they're in trouble.
Yeah, but what happens in the case that what you've just said, that Chris Hedges talks about quite a lot, where the middle class is being hollowed out deliberately. So they now don't have the house. They're going to be the house slaves. Privileges aren't going to be available to them anymore. So it's just a dangerous little game that they're playing, where they could be fomenting.
It's incredibly dumb. You see, that's why I say there's a golden opportunity. If they have stagflation and if they have hyperinflation, there'll be nothing left of the middle class. So anybody that has property, say you have a big mortgage and you have a secure income, you're laughing in hyperinflation because your house is worth more and more. And if you have a source of income, you can pay your mortgage off. So they can buy the middle class if they, homeowners. But it's a very dangerous game because if you lose your income or something, if you fall off the ladder, during hyperinflation or something, you're in deep trouble. You'll go straight to the bottom, like snakes and ladders. So the middle class property owners will become more and more gun-toting, siding with the establishment.
Yeah,
but if you but their number will shrink, and they're useless, right? The middle class is only good while holding the system together. So they're only good for social cohesion. If there's unrest on the street, they're irrelevant. People in the suburbs are irrelevant. It doesn't matter what they think. The voting system is already hacked to oblivion. So voting doesn't matter. So what's the point of having this buffer between you and the suffering classes? It doesn't help you. And so that's the problem that they face. They really are straddling a tightrope, trying to do this great reset. And yeah, I wish I could convince people like rebels and stuff who think you have to get to the middle class and the silent majority and all of those, because they're going to vote and change the government. So I say, well, yeah, in a normal liberal democracy, but if we're talking about extreme times, then the only thing that knocks the middle class out is if you go to war and have a draft. They'll rebel against that. The other thing they'll rebel against is the younger generation. They don't have a house. And so if college is not a formula and they get drafted, they're going to really rebel. Because you see, I think that war is likely to be a real meat grinder war. Because nobody would have, like I've said, nobody's going to give America the war at once, which is a highly technical war that's 3 days long. Especially, they want to do the Gulf War again, right? Because they're like, nobody's going to give them the Gulf War again. They're going to try and drag them into Afghanistan and stuff like that again, and try and wear them down. So they're going to try and get them into a quagmire. And if the quagmire gets deep enough and enough trouble brews at home, it's very good to have a draft. If you take all the people below 27, you just have to keep everybody that's younger than 27 occupied. That's all they have to do to stop a revolution. So you can do that now by doing psyops and stuff like Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for Future, where you just distract the youth and you you divert the rebellious spirit into useless crap, which they've done very, very successfully. But that only goes so far, and that's not going to last to when people start, protesting a draft, because they know there's blood at the other end of that little plane journey to some hellhole, and so then they're going to fight really, really hard. They're not going to, all this fetishization of nonviolence will quickly go out of the window with a rebellion against the draft. So if you take food problems, if you take a financial reset and an intractable quagmire of a war somewhere, then the establishment's in real trouble. Then they have to keep control, just with a big stick. And that's what they're gearing up for. You can see it all over, that they're militarizing the police, and they setting up the legal frameworks for really draconian kind of clampdowns on civil unrest, and they getting all these weapons to use against the civilian population. So they clearly are going to really knuckle down on people. But in America, they're in deep trouble because of Second Amendment. America is so heavily armed that they to really clamp down on the American population is going to be pretty damn difficult.
Well,
you
in
can
that
see all these scenarios where America.
So, if it comes to a crunch like that, where there's so much civilian firepower, because I'm sort of, comparing it to other countries where the civilian population is not armed at all, that in a certain sense, a sort of rebellion there could, I kind of lost the thread of what I was going to say, but it could be an inspiration for people in other countries who don't feel as empowered as the Americans are with their guns and their wardrobe and this kind of thing.
Yeah. So most countries disarm their civilian populations by just making draconian laws against gun ownership, and so just say, oh, you'll do 50 years in jail if you're caught with a weapon, and then that normally it's kind of like in Britain, that completely disarmed the population in Britain when they did that in the 80s. But it's not so easy in America because of the Second Amendment. They'll never get a constitutional change. So they're in a bit of a sticky spot. The founding fathers were pretty devious to put the Second Amendment in because it's not easy to clamp down. It was what they intended, that you can't easily hold the population down by force, and you can't easily disarm them either. And so, America's in a unique position. I mean, somewhere like Britain and stuff is basically everybody's to the slaughter, right?
It's also a gigantic market. Like it's a big business in the States. The armories, the shops that sell weapons, everything. It's an extremely good business. Like you've got enormous forces there too. It's not just the Second Amendment and the whole thing. You've got the economical thing too. It's enormous.
Yeah, I remember when. I had just a small window into that personally because my father was a great white hunter in Australia, and when I was younger, and quite a good friend of his was a gunsmith. I mean, a real skilled craftsman. He would make gun stocks, beautifully crafted timber work and everything like that, and turn rifle barrels, all this kind of thing. He would produce like high quality works of art, basically. And he just lived quite close by. And I remember at that time, it was probably during the late 70s in Australia, where they were going to introduce the restrictions on gun ownership. And of course, it was going to put this fellow completely out of business, totally, because it was just, obviously shutting down his little industry and a lot of other people's as well. But the thing that was, the two things I think that stuck in my mind, well, of course, his personal rage against all this, but also the fact that it was just introduced with really, it was indefensible. Nobody could say a word against it. Because if you said a word against it, that you were in favor of murderers and all sorts of you, in other words, you were part of the problem, not the solution. You couldn't defend it on any grounds whatsoever. They were even where they said, well, like clay pigeon shooters and this kind of thing, was still very, very difficult to defend. I mean, the whole thing just sort of shriveled up in a kind of a shameful cringe, really.
Well, they were cleverer in France. They were cleverer in France when that happened. The same sort of thing where all European countries have had this after World War II, where they kind of tried to control gun ownership. They developed an enormous lobby with the hunters. And the hunters' lobby in France is even politicians have to be careful where they thread with them. Their rights of hunting, there's a lot of forest and there's a lot of, so there are in every part of the country, in every little county, every mayor, and politician. And so there's an enormous amount of weapons owned by the so-called hunters who sometimes don't hunt, but they're part of those groups, and that's how they've got around this gun ownership. And there are a lot of guns in France, but they are in the hands of people who are supposed to go and they're controlled. They have to pay a permit. They have to declare their weapons. So, well, people think that we know how many weapons there are, but you know, but that's how they got around it. It's quite clever.
Well,
Yeah.
there's there are a number of game changers now, and that's one of the things is that you can do 3D printing, and technology and stuff allows people. If, say, people in Britain suddenly wanted to arm themselves, and the situation got to a point where they didn't care about draconian regulations against gun ownership, there are a lot of ways you can get weapons these days that are ghost guns and things like that. But I think in terms of the danger to the state is it's a completely different landscape now, because the biggest threat is digital. So if where they're vulnerable is online. It's the whole digital world, and this whole thing about cyber polygon and stuff is they realize that that they're not in danger in the old way, where people with guns would kind of take their local state house or something. They're vulnerable on that their whole fragile economy can come unstuck with cyber warfare, and so the whole thing has moved into this new arena, and you don't really need guns anymore to actually bring down a state. In fact, they're a liability. So the cyber war has already started in a big way, but it's all state actors now. But there are lots and lots of groups that, for starters, all the states have been so into cyber warfare now for since 2008 really, and so maybe 2006 I think is when they really started in a big way. But you see, what the state always forgets is that the guys that you train and have on your side are not necessarily always going to be loyal to you. So a lot of the people that come out of these things that are retired people or people that leave the military and stuff, they have all these skills and they can form their own rebel groups. So the state runs into the problem that they train up all these guys like Unit 8200 in Israel. You never know what those guys do afterwards. If those guys then turn against the state, they know all the stuff. They've got all the tools and stuff. And so the state's vulnerable from a number of angles. But I think that the biggest vulnerability is in cyber warfare and the internet. But then the way to actually attack them there is with an alternate reality game. So yeah, I mean, I think it's such a big opportunity. That's just I just wish we could just make more traction with it. But I feel I'm heading very much for a oh god, I saw it coming and just couldn't. I'm going to be very disappointed that this opportunity's been lost.
What do you mean? Do you mean because of the delays with faulty, or is it because there's other? Because I try to understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in general, it's just such hard work. To people just can't see it the way I see it.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
Well,
did you make any progress?
I mean,
to get Spencer McCall again, or some other guys who are involved in.
I can, if there's nobody waiting, yeah, I think it's might be time to bring Spencer back. Just wanted to give it some time.
And Jody Aitken, did Jody Aitken?
He's missing again. I mean, never responded. So, yeah.
But what are the major? I mean, I don't. You see, I'm really. I mean, I'm completely a beginner in trying to understand all these things. You've been on that for years, and you've got a brain for that, and I don't. But your frustration, what is it directed at exactly? Is it amount of?
it's just the thing. The thing is that, like, it just seems. I'm just a little bit disappointed. Things like Alison, she, you see, the way I see it exactly the same way she sees it. It's basically, there's this. It's kind of like a force of nature. This digital thing. It's much more than just, you know, transhumanism and stuff. It is a fundamental, you know, kind of metaphysics, and it is a showdown between, you know, Team Human and all these transhumans. So it's so frustrating that everybody gets a little sliver of it, and then you find somebody like Alison who completely gets it, and then she goes, "But I'm all about peace and dandelions," and it's like, it seems like everybody that can get it gets some piece of it, and then the rest, it just falls through the fingers and stuff, and it's like, it's very frustrating not being able to, you get somebody that like can do the ARG part, but then they have no interest in in activism or rebellion or something, and then you get the rebel thing, and then they no about the other side, about the ARG side, and it's like it's just can't get it together so that everybody has all the pieces in it. They're like, oh right, got it.
Yeah, but
it's like everybody has a piece together.
But do those people have to be really in the know? If you can try to, I don't know, filling gaps and making connections. I find it hard to express what I mean, but there's all these interesting people who know a lot of things who can they don't have to be completely all involved in, maybe we went too much to Alison, we went too much frontal, and we didn't kind of maybe maneuver a bit and try to get her from a different point of view. You see, I don't know. I was trying to see what made her turn away from us, and I think it might have been this. Well, we were upfront with who we are, what we think, what we want to do, and maybe we should have just said, well, we want to discuss AI and control, and and we're not. And we went. I was it me. I did the emails, and maybe I with your help, enormous. But maybe we said too much about us. That we did.
Well, she found out on her own. Well, the tripping point for her is tricking people for their own good. So it's the ethical thing of basically but it's it's entirely unrealistic to think you can spell it all out, and for people and give them a brochure of what it's going to be like. It's like it's just not possible.
Maybe it was a childish point, though. I mean, I made a reply under that one of her little videos, pointing out that the obvious refutation of that argument is anyone who's a parent. You've got to, at some stage, the only way you're going to get a kid to do something for its own good is you've got to con it, trick it, lie to it, do whatever it's going to take. Then after you've done that, the child will see for itself that the value of what you've got it to do. It'll be okay from that point on, but there's no way you're going to get that result without without doing this dreadful, unethical thing that she's going on about. And really, you could say, oh, well, that's all right in the case of children, blah, blah, blah. But, we live in a highly infantilized society. Anyway, obviously that didn't cut any mustard with her. Hugh, can I ask you?
But see, it's kind of like a package deal. Is to actually get the whole picture, you've got to think in terms of doomerism. So you have to think that, kind of Guy McPherson-y, that we are at risk of near-term extinction. So a lot of people don't think we are in much peril. And so the people that get that, then they like Sam Mitchell and stuff, and then they all like defeated and nihilistic and everything, and they don't want to do anything. And so, and then, the people, and then they don't understand the technical side and all of that. And then, you get Alison who completely gets the technical side, but she's never heard about climate change or doomerism. She thinks we've got 10,000 years to deal with these guys and so I
but
just
the
feel like, isn't there
interesting
anybody
thing is that, you know, like if you look at Alison, though, she's capable of entertaining what most people think of pretty woo-woo ideas, all her, you know, subtle energies and sort of you know, native mystical stuff going on, which is pretty far out there for most people. And yet but she can hang out off the edge of the boat in that direction. But if you take her over to the other side of the boat, she won't hang out in the other direction to the same degree. She's got very selective transgression of accepted boundaries there. There's a real kind of sort of
yeah, I mean,
you know, brick walls being assembled. I'll have this kind of I'll have this kind of esotericism, but not that kind. You know, is too much.
yeah.
Cool.
Well, I mean, no, there's no logic to it, right? There's no logic. I mean,
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
you know, she's not going to go and ask people, you know, hey, is it okay if I exude this positive energy and transform the whole world? And so, you know, she's going to do that without anybody's consent. But then it was like, yeah, but you know, why are you allowed to do that? But you're not allowed to do something that might practically work and actually change the world. And like, well, I think what it really is she doesn't really want to change the world. She's got eco anxiety. But I think most people are on that. They're just working from a kind of pleasure principle. And so anybody that's has a bit of eco anxiety, they want something to do to alleviate that. There are very few people that want to, you know, actually do something for the world.
That's connected to the denial of death.
Maybe just themselves.
That's connected to the denial of death. I think it has the same roots and the same kind of.
That's a good.
Yeah, but it's selfish though. They're just thinking of themselves. There are very few people that think in a bigger, you know, like that really are thinking about nature and the world and the.
But do we need a lot of people on board to start this ARG?
Yeah, you see, it's trying to get it launched is difficult, but the way these things work is it's okay. So this is the way you bootstrap any kind of enterprise is the same way you do this, and so this is called crossing the chasm is the big thing. So crossing the chasm is very difficult thing to do. You, as an entrepreneur bootstrapping a company, you have to beg, borrow, and steal, and cajole, and get people together, and things fall apart. You've got to do a lot of herding cats. But the way you get across the chasm is just you get enough together that, you know, something clicks. And then when something clicks, you cross the chasm, and then what they say, you're into the tornado. So the whole thing changes. Suddenly it takes off, and you know, it goes kind of viral, and then just goes nuts. And then you have to kind of change everything you do. It kind of has to switch the opposite way in a lot of ways. It's kind of like going through the sound barrier. You know, like in the old days, everybody used to think, oh, you know, when you go through the sound barrier, you have to reverse the controls, because there was a movie that during Chuck Yeager's time that had that. And so, yeah, when I was a kid, everybody believed that when reverse the control on a plane. But anyway, it's kind of like that. Is you go through the sound barrier, and then the rules flip, and you have to reverse the controls in a way. But most entrepreneurs can't survive crossing the chasm, because they don't know, and they can't. They don't know that the rules are different inside the tornado. But yeah, this is basically what you have to do. You just peck away and just try and get people involved and stuff, and just it's.
So as
an entrepreneur, you're mostly pitching ideas, but you need money. You need some famous person, or you need money or something. It's something to initiate it. You can't just. It doesn't just happen because everybody gets together and thinks it's a great idea. you need a
thank you. I don't understand
little.
anything about this. So, I mean, I'm just like listening to what you're saying is foreign language and I'm learning. Thank you, because I just no idea of logistics there.
So as a follow-up
Yeah.
as a follow-up to Sophie's
Go on.
question, would the value then that Allison would have brought to the ARG is her popularity or her audience? Because if you already are, you have the same understanding of where AI and transhumanism are taking us, and we listen to her, so we would get the information from her and an understanding. What additional value would she have brought to the ARG? Would it be her following, her popularity, her connections?
No, no, it's really no, it's really sales, right? So it's so you're trying to get a winning team together, and so each person in the team has the expertise. So it's really for sales, so that she completely understands the space and the research, and she's very convincing on that. So if you say, well, the narrative, the easy narrative for the ARG is what we came in on, is you just say it's a very easy, rebellious, so basically cross-cutting narrative that appeals across the board to people is, Team Human against the transhumanists. She understands the transhumanists well, and so she's great for selling that idea. So anybody, that's famous or has money to invest or something like that, she can quickly explain, all that stuff credibly, explain the narrative, and so you need all those kind of people. So you put all the pieces together. So each person brings something that is a piece of the overall package. Then, so if you're normally pitching to people, say like investors, right? So for seed capital or something like that, and what they test you on where the gaps are. They want to see what the gaps are, and so they test your story. And okay, but then if you have some glaring hole where you say, well, we have this fabulous idea for nanotechnology, but we don't have anybody on the team that actually is a biochemist. A small flaw which we'll fix later. They will tell you to fuck off and fix that before they'll look at you. So it's the same. If you say, we have an ARG, this is the narrative for the thing, and the whole thing, as I wrote in that document, Faulty, then if Faulty would be the kind of
the
venture capitalist that would be, well, I mean, in this scenario, he'd be playing the role of like a venture capitalist. What should do is ask questions of like, where there's a hole here, and then we have we can't fill the whole of that whole thing about the transhumanists, but she's got it down pat.
Yeah,
so
she's the business expert.
Anybody, she would do it. Yeah. So even if she just played the role as we only asked her to play the role as an expert. We never asked her to get involved in she just didn't want on principle that we weren't aligned with her thinking. And I don't know how we can get aligned on her thinking. It's like peace and battles. What the hell to do with that?
Yeah, but how does that we would be detrimental to her image? She obviously said that it wouldn't fit.
We said it was confidential.
We're not the sort of people to associate with, more or less, you would say.
Well, nobody would. I mean, I have to agree with her on that point. But the thing is that it could be confidential, right? So we weren't going to make it public, right?
But
that's the whole thing. I thought all the way down the road is nobody. I always took it as read that everybody understands that we're not going to make this public, right?
So it's a predicament. So probably there are no solutions. But what are her solutions to what she sees as this
I asked her
problem of transhumanism and AI?
I asked her the same question. She never answered. I sent her following email, say, what is your form of activism? What do you propose? No answer.
Maybe it's that mystical thing
No, she
of
said it's peace and
energy and
daffodils. She says, I
vibration.
offer peace and daffodils.
It is. It's all her use of subtle energies to influence proceedings. You know, the point is she's dealing with people. She's trying to influence people who are more machine-like than human, and so it's not really susceptible to the kind of approach that she has. I don't think she's realised that. Hugh, can I go? I want to just bring up two things. One was, you were mentioning the internet, the end of the open internet. And so that's also an increased reason for wanting to establish the ARGs so that they are within particular countries and can operate independently, I guess. Is that too far ahead for you to have thought about at this stage?
Yeah, no, that's
like
right. You see, a secret society. Yeah, a secret society can cross borders. That's the value. So, the national borders are a big liability for the state. And that's one of the reasons why Klaus Schwab and all these globalists want to get rid of national borders, because they allow something like a secret society to operate. So like the Falun Gong or something like that, if it's cross-border thing, and these things are, you can always find safe haven in some place like Iceland or somewhere that doesn't really go after these people because they're not really threatened by them. And then it's very difficult for the state to get you. See, like Assange is happening now. But here's what's happening to the internet. The internet is becoming balkanized. So what each one of these countries is doing is they're trying to get control. It's the end of the open internet. But there's the bamboo curtain, and there'll be an iron curtain around Russia, and everybody needs to be able to switch off the public internet. Because what happened with the Arab Spring was there was too much organization going on. All the states learned that a lot of the stuff was organized on things like Facebook. So they can only go so far. They can get Facebook on board with basically shutting the stuff down, and that's what they're doing. They're doing a practice run now with all the pandemic. But they really need to shut down the internet. So what happened in the wake of the Arab Spring is every tin pot dictator made sure that they controlled all the servers, and everything is based on the DNS, right? The domain name server. So what's coming is DNSSEC, and so they will have secured DNS. So they will control whether the DNS server is actually the correct one, because it will be authenticated with DNSSEC, and so it's very controlled and restricted. So when Klaus Schwab keeps on going on about this collaboration and across states in the digital realm and all this stuff, it's code, and what they're talking about is really control of the DNS server, so you have multi-factor authentication and stuff like that. But what that means is that whoever the entities are, they will be known to the government, and then the government will kind of allow that transaction to happen. It's not as overt as the government. It will be done through proxies and basically through chains of authority and things like that, and certification of chains and stuff like that. But it'll now you can go to a domain and just use TLS, and you can talk to a website, and it's just between you as the user and the website, and then that traffic it's just between those two parties in effect. All the other parties in between, like your web, basically whoever provides you with your web service provider, all these kind of intermediates, it's completely transparent to them. So things have changed a bit, and so that the law changed so they could shape the data and give different classes of service. But it'll be much different. So it'll be more like who are you? Are you allowed to talk to this person? You must, have a full identity, and it would be a global identity. So before you go and transact, say, bought something on Amazon, you would have to go and authenticate, get a universal identity, prove it's actually you, prove that the buyer or where the website you're going to is actually a legitimate service. And in effect, what they're trying to do is to shut down any illicit activity on the web. So they will get to a point where you can't have anything other than a preferred chat server and stuff like that. So if you have 4chan or something, they will shut you down in a heartbeat because you just won't be able to find the servers. Exactly what they did to Iran, right? So Iran, they took over all their websites a couple of weeks ago. Okay, and the way they do that is they don't take down the websites. They just take down the name server, so you can't find the servers. They just redirect you to so your traffic redirects and stuff will go to safe places, and it's all very safe and secure because they have a trusted intermediary, and so it's think of it like a traffic system. At the moment, everybody just makes their own path through the desert to wherever they get to, and what they're planning and what's coming down rapidly is that it'll be just like the highway system, and it'll be policed, and you will have rules of the road that you can only make left turns in this situation. You'll have to obey the signposts on it. So it'll be policed like a little village. Now, the problem is for the states is that in a balkanized universe, it's not so easy to get all the states to comply. So everybody will have their own little piece locked down. So China is already, completely controlled experience in a controlled web that they've got. But if you imagine things like the Tor network and the dark web, which is the vast majority of things, if people make parallel protocols, they don't use your name server and that kind of thing, they run the risk that people make their own system in parallel. Now, then it's very difficult because that would be sort of like equivalent to VPNs and stuff all over the world. And so what it would be was the state would struggle to shut those things down. They would struggle to recognize them and struggle to police them. So on the road to this Orwellian nightmare, where every transaction is done with blockchain, there's just eCash, and so everything is micro-controlled. You won't be able to do a transaction that's illegal. It's kind of like 1984, where they edited the language. They changed the language so you couldn't do a thought crime because you just didn't have the language ability to do a thought crime. It's the same kind of thing. You won't be able to do any kind of thought crime on the internet because they won't give you the tools to do it. So in other words, it's already on Reddit, right? You can't actually use a number of keywords because they just auto delete. And so the same thing, if you tried to buy drugs or something, that transaction would be auto deleted before you even started. So it's and the same would be rebellion. So then you couldn't rebel, you couldn't do a secret society because basically there wouldn't be any way that you could basically AI would look at what you're crafting in terms of the message and say, oh, this is illicit, and you wouldn't be able to post it. Kind of like, it's all a bit retarded because just like these guys are very linear thinking Vogons. So just like you can see on Reddit, we easily get around all the keywords just by substituting little Greek symbols and stuff. It's as easy as pie to get around it. But they don't think that way. They all rule-abiding Vogons. So Klaus Schwab never thinks, well, we're going to do this wonderful great reset and herd all these people through this. And they're not thinking through, other people can also do that, dimwit. So basically you run the risk that there's an entire parallel underground. And basically you have all these people living on the dark web. And then of course they say, okay, well, anybody found using this bit of software or has a Tor browser or uses Tor gets the death penalty. But it doesn't. It just reinforces the underground and makes people work harder against the state. So it's a great opportunity because these guys are so retardedly stupid that they will fuck this up. They will fuck up, and they will fuck up balkanization of the internet. But the problem is there's nobody taking advantage of it. Yeah, here it is coming. And well, nobody. There are lots of people taking advantage.
Here, can I just jump in?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to make this point a little while ago. Is that, I mean, a lot of what you've been saying tonight is sort of expressing the sense of urgency that this is a period of opportunity to do something. And I just want, if I can just drag it back, because you haven't heard from Faulty apparently. What's your intention there? You're just going to wait for a little while? I mean, I'm just wondering whether it might be possibly a time to send him a completely different kind of message, just on that particular point of, do you realize how short the time is, that if you don't get in on the ground floor of this opportunity, you're going to miss it completely, and just it'll be gone forever. I mean, is it worth sending him a little message, taking that angle?
Maybe, I think maybe tomorrow, because it's been a week, right? So I think maybe tomorrow, if you don't do anything, then Tuesday I better send something. So did you get my last thing? But I don't think it's worthwhile doing that, because really, I'm sure the reason why there's been no response is just because he's distracted and busy on other stuff. So it doesn't help
he's going to be distracted and busy with other stuff for eternity unless we can get create a sufficient crack in his little world. Yeah. He's just going to go back. It's just so obvious. Yeah. Look, maybe I'm up myself a little bit, but just from especially one person that I know personally, who has just basically made a fine art of spending her whole life being perpetually too busy with what I'm really devoted to, blah, 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 to let anything else get a foot in the door. It's just like, oh yes, that's good, but I'm occupied. I've got another mission, blah, blah, blah. And you can see that I picked that up pretty well immediately with Faulty. This it's pretty well hermetically sealed. You're going to get this eternal deferral. And at some stage, maybe we might have to take the risk of completely alienating him by putting a much stronger little explosive device in the doorway to try and push it open a little bit further.
Well, the invitation to go to Greece could have an expiry date.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether the invitation to Greece cuts any mustard at all. I just don't know what to.
Well,
it's not a bad suggestion, Sophie. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, but I don't think we can put any pressure on. I mean, I think in a previous discussion was correct that basically he just has to go at his own pace and he has to leave. So
may I ask you?
The thing is, it's a question of timing. So just let me finish what I'm saying. It's a question of timing, and so the timing is when he's only going to. I mean, he's hermetically sealed, and always will be. The only gap you get is when his world falls apart and you realize it's not actually coming together. So I thought we were at that point, and we got a good response. So it seems right, but now we're off on another wild goose chase. But from our point of view, from my point of view, it seems like he's completely wasting his time on this crap. But from his point of view, it's all very useful stuff and very, very important. So he doesn't see it our way. So, I think we just have to soft pedal it and just keep on keep on going until, you know, we got a good response. So it's just, we just wait until, you know, we get,
well,
get some airtime.
We never thought we would have him on a conversation with us in the first place, only even a couple of months ago. So at least, you know, we've achieved that. So it's true. Maybe we have to be patient, but I didn't want to say put pressure on him by saying that there's an expiry date, but doing it gently, but saying, well, this can't go on because you have other things you might be going other places and stuff. But you say the journey could take place between this date and that date, and you can pick your date. And do you know, that's what I meant by that. And
well, there's an expiry on this because basically the numbers in Greece are skyrocketing. Ever since they open up the lockdown, and the numbers have taken off like a rocket.
Let me disagree on that.
You know, it's like
the numbers are growing everywhere, but it's the number of cases. But the numbers of deaths and the numbers of hospitalizations are not.
The deaths?
Nowhere, except
the deaths
in certain very deprived countries. Now it's wait to see in a couple of weeks what's going to happen. But for the moment, it seems like it's the young people who are getting it, and they're not getting sick because all the other guys have been killed or vaccinated.
You know? Maybe, but I mean, in Israel, the deaths are going up. And
are they?
I think the deaths are going up in Greece.
Are they? I thought, because the last time, I'm sorry, I didn't see. May I, when I just speak, do you know, you were talking about the web before, and I have something on my mind. You've posted a couple of videos there about this guy explaining about the difference between the web, the internet, the deep web, the dark web. And I've listened to that carefully. So apparently from what he was saying, the deep web is much, much, much more important than the web, and actually that Google cannot go to the huge majority of places on the internet. Is that right? Did I get it right? The deep web talks about everything was protected by passwords.
I've said before that the dark web.
No, but
the dark web is like 90% of the web. There's far more to the web than you can actually access. But Google has web crawlers.
My question was about web.
So the deep web is just things that are not addressable by Google. So you find machines because you do domain name lookups. And so Google only follows links in web pages and basically trawls, you know, domains. So it can only find things from other things. And so it's just the public layer on top that people want to display from web servers. But the vast majority of machines are not web servers, and they don't want you to access them. They data servers and stuff like that. But a lot of the stuff is B2B. A lot of the traffic is B2B and private. And so, yeah, and the dark web is the little corner where all the illegal shit goes on. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the traffic on the web is military and shit like that, and that, you know, they don't want all that stuff public. But it just means that it's not addressable, right? So you can't search for it. But the servers are there. I mean, if you write a program that just goes through all the IP addresses and pings them, you'll find that there's servers there, and that's what these guys do. They ping them and interrogate them and figure out what the operating system is and see what ports are open, and then they start hacking around and then try and get in that way. That's how that stuff. If you put a server up on the dark web, or it'll be pinged at a rate of about 1 second by basically guys trawling, basically malicious, about a rate of 1 second. So basically you'll go ping, ping, you'll get these illegal accesses about that rate. So it's a tremendous amount of traffic going on that's malicious. And, so a lot of, you see, one of the reasons why there are no chips on the market is because they're backdoors in everything. And nobody really knows how many backdoors they're in. And, they keep on finding these zero-day attacks that really they're embedded, and they're all like sleeper things. So they don't know how many servers are actually compromised. So come, World War III, day one of World War III, everybody's going to find out, because everybody's going to activate all their Trojan horses and stuff on all these machines. So what these teams have done, if you go on the dark web, one of the things you can buy is compromised servers. They sell them in bulk. Your machine, the machine that you got right now, could be compromised, and people could be trading your IP address on the dark web. And so they have all these bots that are kind of sleeping on these servers. So when World War III starts, those bots are going to come alive, and they're going to be attacking all these vectors. They're going to be attacking government servers and military installations and stuff. So the military needs to be able to shut down, vast pieces of the web and shape the traffic and stuff at the nodes on the internet. But yeah, it's going to be a complete fandango on day one of World War III. That's what they're prepping for. They're all trying to get clean chipsets. They're all trying to get But yeah, the internet isn't going to stand a chance. I mean, it's going to stay up in a war, but it's going to be a battlefield. So civilian use is going to disappear. And it's really a military thing. The internet you got to think of the internet as a military thing that they're just allowing you to use out of the kindness of their hearts, just so that you keep on supporting it and support all the money spent. But as soon as there's major wars or something like that, you can expect your cell phone won't work anymore and stuff. They made a big fuck up during 9/11, and they didn't realize that everybody would phone their mom. So all these Cold War systems and that were set up for this resilience in these, the internet itself is built with a lot of redundancy, and that was the reason, was to survive nuclear attacks. Now, what they didn't realize was that if there was a nuclear attack, then the internet would be unusable quickly, because everybody would start phoning their mom. And that's what happened in 9/11, is none of the systems in the government, everybody was supposed to use the internet. They couldn't stop all the civilian use of it, so it was completely overloaded. And it became dysfunctional. I think Bush and stuff, I strongly suspect, while he was flying around in Air Force One, he was completely incommunicado because everything was overloaded. Strongly suspect that. Anyway. Did everybody disappear?
No.
I'm still here.
I lost everybody's picture.
So you're contacting Faulty. You're contacting Faulty on next week again?
Oh well, I'll do it on like Tuesday if we don't hear anything.
Yeah. And is there anything?
I'll just ping. What's that?
Is there anything in the line of people that are like Alison? Because to find somebody who matches her is quite difficult. But I know, but in terms of the way she explains things, I'm not talking about her methods. But is there anybody that around her that we could start sort of investigating that could fill her void, the void that the place she could have had in our plan?
That would be good to look for people.
Yeah.
Just people that understand the Great Reset and stuff like that. Mm. Yeah, I thought Dimitri would be good on that score. I was rather surprised that we'll never come to anything. What? Are you kidding me? You think these guys are just playing snooker? I mean, come on, this is not a tea party. This is those guys were coming out of Davos. They're going to reshape the world. It's not a question like
It's a pity
never
because
amount to anything because Russia's not. Russia's involved, by the way.
I know a collective who's working a lot on transhumanism in France, and they're a very rebellious group, and they've even done actions when meeting, but they're all French speakers, and I don't think they have very good English. It would be a very difficult, if you want to collaborate with people in another language, it can be difficult, and especially if we're going to have conversations like this. But I could look at what they're doing at the moment, because they're very good.
I think the more fruitful. I think probably a more fruitful avenue might be the guys around Uncle Ted. So there are lots of guys that are in the orbit around Uncle Ted.
Yeah, but those guys are a bit like that. They're a collective that's extremely underground, and I'm going to. I'll post something about them. I'll post something about them, and you tell me what all of you think.
Yeah, sure, but the thing that I posted about the ITS guys and stuff.
Yeah.
Those guys are public.
Oh yeah, that's different. That's another. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but no, they were talking about, that guy that was interviewed on that thing was anti-civ.
Yeah, that was anti-tech, basic anti-tech. We're not talking about people who are an expertise in the Great Reset and transhumanism, who would have more. It's what you're talking about. Maybe digging into people who have a much more an understanding that is more radical.
I'm sure that there's. I'm sure there are guys in that neck of the woods that understand the Great Reset. Because everybody on the right understands the Great Reset. It is the big conspiracy.
Maybe some friends of Kevin.
Yeah, but those guys are all a bit lowbrow. I mean, they're either doctors and stuff, or otherwise a bit Brubaker Arms or something that's a little bit lowbrow. But
Sophie, would an option be to just start commenting under Alison's videos as somebody, not you, just take on another identity, and just ask innocent questions like, are there any other people who are putting out a message like Alison's? I'm interested in this stuff. I want to follow it up. Are there other people who agree and who are taking a similar line? So you might find somebody else that way. Use the other commenters as your sort of group of people to make suggestions. You may have somebody pop up and say, "Oh yeah, so and so down there has got a a website or a blog, and they're saying almost the same things that Alison is." And then you might be able to find somebody else who's taking a similar line, but who they might be interested in talking to us, whereas Alison isn't. So it might be just a way of uncovering somebody.
I wouldn't really need to change my name because it doesn't matter, because I wouldn't be interacting with her really. I could just, but my name on the YouTube is the same name as on the meetings and the same as on the Proton mail. So it doesn't matter. Like it's. I think I could do that because then somebody might reply. Thank you.
Well, I'm just thinking back to early days when I first discovered the Doomosphere, and it was every now and then that would happen where somebody would pop up in the comments and say, "Oh, hey, I'm really interested in this. Are there other people who are putting out a similar message?" And you would immediately get other commenters provide you with a list of fascinating links to all sorts. They'd be very happy to share their knowledge of who else is out there, and almost invariably you would discover a new opening. Somebody else who was talking in a similar manner, but had a different slant on it, and this kind of thing. So
thank you for that, Gary. I will do that this week.
So another thing might be to look on Reddit. I haven't looked on Reddit if there's there must be a Klaus Schwab or, like a Klaus Schwab watch or something like that. It must be a sub for conspiracies about the Great Reset. I haven't seen one, but I haven't really looked.
Is anybody going to miss Guy McPherson?
I stopped following him. But...
I know. I mean, for about 2 years, I think I couldn't watch him. But you posted that he was retiring from his show on radio.
Nature Bats Last? Or,
yeah.
Yeah, I was getting a little worried they were all going to drink Kool-Aid after him.
Oh, no.
I thought they might have a little, Kool-Aid party at the end of the show. I was getting a little worried. Sounded like they're about to check out. They definitely sound like a bunch that's going to go for the Kool-Aid at some stage.
What are those names I can read in the message? Douglas Roshkoff and Jaron Lanier.
Yeah, I just they're popular computer scientists, computer professors, but I'm not familiar with their total stand on transhumanism and AI.
Yeah, let's try and find another Allison. Oh well. So does that exhaust this evening?
Yeah, we're all dead on it.
I'm exhausted anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just pause just for the hell of it, should we?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. So just fall still. All right. Okay. Well, not a very exciting one, but anyway. Maybe next Sunday.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Have
a good week.
Have a good week.
Thanks, Hugh. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Stop the recording.
Thank you.